Welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark and Melissa DeJesus in the house. Welcome to this broadcast.
We are here. We are here. We are here.
We are. Mm-hmm. And we're looking forward to sharing this conversation and being able to navigate the subject of the inner critic. And we're going to get into that and talk about, well, if you're navigating healing, freedom, mental health, emotional health, relational health, you're going to bump up against this thing that we call, in modern terminology today, we often call the inner critic. And we're using it in the context of you're wanting to heal through, you're recognizing relationship with your parents, recognizing your family upbringing, your generations. You're trying to navigate this whole healing process, this renewal and enhancing mental health, and you're seeing these patterns. Well, we want to talk about the inner critic. We want to talk about in the context of your upbringing, because that's an important thing to understand. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But I do want to say, when it comes to this subject, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think, we're not.
We're not honest.
People say, I want to be honest with you. Like, up until this point, I was lying,
Right.
We're navigating through our journey, encouraging, helping others. Mm-hmm. Our parents are both alive, and they occasionally, from time to time, don't know when or how or when, will tune in to what we talk about. Mm-hmm. So think about that for a moment while you're navigating your journey.
If your parents listen to what you were saying.
And sharing. So it's...
we have different relationships with our parents, of even how we grew up and how we talk about it and how we talk about it with them. And
you mean like in your life versus in my life and my journey?
Yeah.
But we will say, though, that all the factors we teach about and talk about apply across the board in all these areas. Right. They really do. So what does it look like when it comes to navigating the healing and freedom journey while you're still growing as parents, while you're still growing in your marriage, while you're still working through your own areas, while helping others, while family members could tune in from time to time? Who knows how God could use it? I've said this at times where I've actually had to talk about the role of father, and father thinks, well, my dad was in the congregation.
Right.
Try that.
And we have a lot of family that just don't know what we even do. Like, I had to call an aunt and ask them a question a couple weeks back on something with family history. Because, I think I shared on the past podcast about ancestry and ask a question. And she's like, hey, how's it going with you? And I said about the ministry. She's like, oh, you guys are still doing that kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yep. I'm not in rejection. I'm not.
Right. Yeah. That's been an interesting thing to navigate, is like,
yeah,
you're doing this work. And then when you hang out with family, there are times where it's like, do you know what we do?
We're completely ignored in what we do.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it honest and straight up ignored.
It's true.
Like, I had a family member say to me, oh, wow, he wrote books, huh? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And
there's many other things. So if you go to family and sometimes struggle, or a lot of times struggle with not being acknowledged or understood or recognized, we get it. God bless our generations and what we came from, but we've had to navigate a lot of challenges and difficulties to that. That's good.
So yes.
Thanks I appreciate you. Like, I was like gently navigating, and then you went like, we're just ignored.
I come with the volley of like, boom. Yeah. We are. And so it's a multifaceted family affair of things, of how we get engaged. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say that wherever you struggle with the inner critic in your life, I've never heard a story where I don't go, I understand that. Mm-hmm. I have had a worldwide wrestling match with the inner critic, and so I get it, and so have you in many ways. Mm-hmm. So the two of us coming together, boy, we really understand how this inner voice, this inner presence, what it does to really hinder your life and your journey. And it's affected me in so many ways, because it derails the beautiful steps of healing that God is doing in our life. It just keeps wanting to interrupt it, to distort it, to push us back. And I find it has, and I'll get into this more as I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I feel like in Christianity, in your religious upbringing, the inner critic has a whole language of its own that's kind of attributed to like God or good conscience. And really it's a bully. It's a jerk. Yeah. It's nasty. It
steals so much of your day, your time, your joy, your decision, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I think that I want to be as real about this as I can about what you're up against. And this is not an episode of like, here's 3 quick things for the inner critic. We want to like get into the discussion aspect of where it comes from, what it looks like, because we're in the context of healing from your generations, what you come from. And let's get right into that. What is the inner critic, right? And we're using this term because it's a popular term. It and times is used psychologically as just kind of like a quick phrase of this very critical voice that appears in your thoughts. It's like it's personified. It has a influence in your feelings and emotions. Mm-hmm. I would say that as a Christian, the way I would describe it to you as believers is it the enemy? Yes, but it's a combination of things, because the enemy isn't just about giving you thoughts as much as like conditioning you to just constantly react in this world of thoughts. Does that make sense? Right? Where it's like once you're conditioned in criticizing and condemning and being hateful to yourself and constantly looking and checking things that need to be, evaluated and all this in a harsh way, you're on a roller coaster. But the thing I want to bring home is that your inner critic is really brought out in the absence of a healthy parental establishment in your life, or a dysfunctional relationship with your parents. The inner critic is basically the voice of your parents.
Right. Or lack of the voice of your parents.
Yes.
Right.
So the premise I try to bring home to people about their thoughts, it really comes down to this thing I sometimes say about how the enemy wants to be your dad. Kind of like, who's your daddy? Who's your dad, right? Because God is a father. When Jesus said, your father is the devil, what he was saying to the religious people of that day is the thoughts that you're thinking on and spewing out, they're sourced in a father that's not of the kingdom I'm bringing. You're listening to something, and he was talking to religious people. He wasn't talking to just pagan, godless. These were people that were very dedicated, right? But the religious legalism that they carried, it was a bondage. And he's like, no, you're listening to your father, the devil. And that like really angered them, right? It's like, how about that sermon on Sunday? Your father, the devil, come at 10 a.m. Not a popular message. But the inroads to this voice is your parental relationship. And so you said it well. If you want to identify this critical voice that just keeps snapping at you, it keeps these thoughts that just keep hitting at you, resist love, resist grace, right? It often mirrors one or both of your parents, or it has come about through the neglect and absence of a parental voice. So it's really a combination of that, because God designed your parents to tune the frequencies of your inner dialogue. Does that make sense?
So good.
Yeah. And that's why we do so much parent work, because that's what the enemy has attacked. That's what's influenced your thoughts. Right. It's not just like parent bashing.
Right. We don't like when people feel like we're doing that, because that's not what we're trying to do. It's a delicate balance in back to the beginning of like the truth talk, because you got to get real about it. And it can sound harsh, but we're just trying to illuminate so that you understand.
Yeah. And don't you, I feel like you and I are like trying to shake it up a bit.
Correct.
So I guess we kind of have to go, well, if they feel like we're shaking it up too harsh, just understand that there's a lot of denial and a lot of like, well, I grew up in a nice Christian family. It's like, wait, you are so hard on yourself. You are so perfectionistic. That didn't come out of nowhere. That didn't come like just out of the sky. You walked under the wrong bird and like, it just, hit your shoulder. You know what I mean?
Right.
This stuff has a history to it, has a history in your generations, has a history of reproducing in the family line. So I think that the inner critic defaults to what's wrong. It's looking for what's wrong. And when your default setting is to constantly check or analyze what's wrong or what's flawed, it's going to be a very difficult journey, because the journey with God is seeing the good of Christ that he's working inside of you. You know, in Colossians, it says, we want to bring about the acknowledgement of every good thing that is at work within you, something to that extent. I'm not quoting it perfectly, but I find that when we're sin focused, I would say sin obsessed, fault obsessed, we're inflaming that inner critic. We're inflaming that inner Pharisee. We're inflaming. And when we're responding to that constantly, we're going to find ourselves struggling, because the more focus we give it, the more it grows.
Correct. You become very self-obsessed too, without even realizing it. I think for me, that was a big part of my journey in recognizing the patterns of what I was manifesting. I was listening to this white noise in my head and just always slightly distracted in everything.
That's good.
If I walked into a room, it was, rejection talk, and that they don't like you. They're analyzing you. You don't. Right. Well, when I, had to peel the layers back up to even get to what that stuff was, in trying to understand how to even love myself more, because you can recognize it and go, okay, I'm gonna love myself.
Right.
It's not happening. So then you have that voice, that's that white noise all day of how awful you are, you're not doing this right. All the things. We can go over the whole list of things. I had to look at, like, okay, where did this all start?
I think it started for me when I realized I did not know how to receive love when it was given to me. Mm-hmm. I was told occasionally, like, Mark, you have intimacy issues. You have like, and it didn't register. Mm-hmm. Like, no, I know how to have a great conversation. I love you, love exchange, and hey, it took me a while to realize, I was very uncomfortable when a compliment was given to me, or just a genuine exchange. I would find very sophisticated ways to brush it off and not allow love to enter into my heart. And so that was a recognition. Okay, what am I going to do with this? And most people say, I don't know, I'm just uncomfortable. Do you find yourself like uncomfortable when people say nice things about you, or you find it uncomfortable when someone tries to love you and you spin out or you resist? Or I found I would just look at my shoes and not be able to take in what was being said to me.
And don't you think too, when it comes to getting honest about your healing and life and self and all that stuff, there's a lot of, I'm going to use this word, deceit when it comes to how we see ourselves too. So even when you're looking at like someone giving you a compliment and you're brushing it off, like there's something interesting to get to the point of like really seeing yourself for how you process that. Like there's steps to get there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it can be very deceiving in how we even go, oh yeah, I do that because of that. It's like, no, there's deeper things here you got to kind of look at about yourself, and we don't want to do that.
I think
like it's hard to say,
yeah,
I'm not really connected to the people I'm talking to because like it's hard to admit what we manifest, I guess, right?
Well said. I would say I allowed you to be a voice of that in my life. And I think that helped me, because you're like, you provided feedback, and sometimes we need a mirror, and that can be scary. Like when someone says, hey, you struggle in receiving love, this is something that I think you need to be open to.
Right.
Right. And it's like, I want to go hide in shame and never be seen ever again.
But,
and
tell the story and tell your victim story too. And tell no, but I don't do that because of this. Or no, I didn't do that because
defend it.
Yes.
Right. And yeah, I had to you bring up a great point. It's like the whole healing of the inner critic first involves honest recognition. All right, I see it. Because I need to see it for what it is, so that I can be aware of it. And so now in my journey with God, there's it's like you're coming into the light, and it's like, oh, right. I see this is what I listen to. Christians are really good at taking their inner critic and spiritualizing it.
Oh.
It's like, whoo, it's like, it wasn't me, it was the Lord. And it's like translation, I hate myself and I don't want you to know it, right? He must increase, I must decrease. And even subjects like denying yourself, crucifying the flesh, things like that, they get really distorted out of context as a practice of self-beating, self-mutilation, putting yourself down. Jesus is so glorified in this. And I just started calling time out on that. Nope. Jesus didn't die on the cross so you could sit there and just beat over yourself and call that godliness. I was like, I'm calling foul here. This is not it. And I had to call that in my own life because I realized God's love is here. I don't know how to receive it. I don't know how to receive love when it's in the flesh and someone actually delivering it to me. And it's led me on a journey that's quite frankly saved my life. It saved my mental health. And it's something that we're very passionate about for you, is turning the spotlight into how you relate to yourself and what that looks like. Because believe it or not, when you read the scriptures, whether it's Paul or John, and John very well does this in his writings, they're bringing out about how you see yourself, how you interact with yourself. Like even John himself says, when our hearts condemn us. Mm-hmm. Well, there it is. There it is. There's how you relate to yourself, right? What do you do when you start condemning yourself, right? And he talks about how God's greater than us, greater than our hearts, and knows all things. And he talks about the freedom from condemnation. Then there's no fear in love and all that, right? He's talking about in your inner world, who's got the microphone, who's dominating the airwaves, because you're of a kingdom of a Father who is very much wanting you to know his love for you. But I found the problem with myself and most people is not, the problem is not God. The problem is not, the problem is not me. It's something that's in the way.
It's the interference. It's all the interference.
Right?
Right.
Because we want to shine the spotlight on, traditionally, Christians are very, very hard on themselves. And they see that as a good trait. And what I want to bring out is that listening to it, serving it, validating it, hiding it, whatever, it is unproductive for your healing and freedom journey. It is the love and grace of God that leads you into the pathway of victory and overcoming. And so it's challenging, though, because it causes you, I've had to really look at myself through an honesty. Sobriety is a word that I use, where I see it for what it is and realize, I don't know how to be loved. And I grew up in the church my whole life.
Right. How
did I get here where I don't know the depth and breadth in an amazing way as an adult, struggling to connect to the love of God?
Right, because then it reveals what your relationships really are all around you. Because when that gets worked out between you and God, with yourself, then you can truly, really connect with others. I think if we got honest about that,
that's right.
It is a scary thing,
right? Because you're used to it. These thoughts are, they're the inner critic doesn't scream all day. In some ways, it does. it's just like that, that annoying presence kind of lays, under the radar. And once love and grace is presented to your life, it just comes up and just like snaps, punches, and kind of goes back under the surface. Does that make sense?
Right.
Or maybe I'm just putting words to like my daily journey.
No, my brain is like firing off into all these things because I want us to be clear about this too. I don't want to add any confusion to anybody about this either. I want us to talk honestly and clear about it. I know you and I talk. See, this is even the inner critic, right? Because we know we have like people with OCD that listen, and it can spiral people out.
Oh, for
and
sure.
We don't want to do that, but yeah, I can't, always worry about how people are going to take things too.
So what's the current one that you're thinking about now? You said,
Oh my gosh, my brain has hit like all these these buttons of just even, sharing. It's just even the things that I'm saying. Everything I say, I feel like I can hear this. Well, don't say that way because someone's going to take it this way.
Almost like that's a manifestation of the inner critic live right now.
Correct. Right.
Right. Because this is another way the inner critic really rises up in that it's like a combination of shame. We're constantly sharing vulnerably and what we're going through, what we've been through, what we're working through, right? We've had to learn in real time how to navigate that because the inner critic rises up in the midst of a vulnerable moment where you're trying to be vulnerable because that's where vulnerability is where we're changed, right? And you express that. We've had to work through that constantly and still growing through that of what it means to go, no, I'm going to keep moving into that because that's where the gold is, but it's a struggle along the way because when you do Christian-based stuff, you always have the contrarians. What about this? What about that? What about this? And that can get to you and inflame the inner critic. Is that true?
It's so true. It's so true.
I will say this, that where a lot of people, I think, will relate to this. Mom and Dad, I love you. But where the inner critic inflamed the most is there's a lot of religious legalism infused in my church and faith upbringing. Yeah. Many of the preachers that were highlighted, many of the speakers, many of the teacher books, there is a lot of great precepts they taught about, but it really pushed this heavy, like you better get your heart right, you better be right. And that inflamed a very heavy religious perfectionism in my life. And that's where, this term, the inner critic, this inner Pharisee, we can give a lot of terms and names to it. And it is something that I've had to confront at many layers of my life and my journey because it caused me to, in my ministry, whether I was a worship leader in the middle of worship and like critiquing what I'm doing in that moment, I've actually preached sermons where the inner critic was like hitting at me the whole way through from beginning to end, and I could barely think straight. And no one knew. For some miraculous reason, I was able to have a conversation of preaching and teaching the whole time under assault, just a whole time under a battle. And yes, is this the enemy? Of course. But the healing journey is not just, let me just cast the enemy out. Let me just pray a prayer. This is a relational learning because the true healing to the inner critic is the invasion of God's love and grace. It's like a river that just starts to drown out the power of that voice. But I've had to learn in a relationship journey what it means to be unconditionally loved, what it means to be nurtured, what it means to really be rooted in that. And that's a journey. That's a journey of learning. And I had to be open to that, of like, what is love? What does it look like?
Yeah. And even as you were just saying that, in my head, I kept thinking the whole time, it's not that I don't like the term inner critic. For me, that is more self-hate. It's like an absolute barrage of self-hate.
You're right.
That is coming for me, that I had to, that terminology helped me in going, okay, I just cannot stand myself.
Yeah, you're like you're like, let's get to the point here, and that's
yeah. I just
where
cannot stand myself, and it manifests in a million different things. And I'll give a real time, example. Why my brain is fried. Of how for me I had to look at it and get to the deeper root. So for me, growing up, later in life, I struggled deeply with social stuff and being around people. As soon as I walk into a room, I am thinking everyone is critiquing me. Well, I'm critiquing me. Mm-hmm. The way, even before I got there, the way that I'm dressing, the way that my hair is, the way that I look, the way that everything about me. Now you could say, people would think maybe, well, you're being self-obsessed. Oh yeah, I am. Because I can't stand myself and nothing feels good and nothing feels right. And for me, in ways that it manifested in very obsessive compulsive things too, that I would have to do to then what came out of all that self-hate of trying to make myself feel at peace before I would even leave the house. But that's a whole other time. So
one thought in there before you move on, when we are too focused on ourselves, it's quite often revealing a self-hate issue.
Correct.
And a lot of times we could think, oh, you're too in love with yourself. And it's like, no, when you hate yourself, you're analyzing, because your view, when you love yourself the way God loves you, you're more at peace to just flow. Mm-hmm. And you're looking outward, and you flow outward in a healthy way. And you're letting God's love flow through you and out, and you receive it back. That's how God designed us. It's like you get stuck.
Correct.
And the analysis.
Right.
And then for me and many, perfectionism flows. I got to make this just right. Correct. And I think you relate to that too. Yep. So sorry to interrupt,
No, I think this is great.
Yeah.
So, I'm preparing to leave the house. I'm already feeling this insane amount of uncomfortability in my own skin, self-hate head to toe, not feeling good. Then I go somewhere and I walk in a room and I instantly think, no one can stand me. So then a persona would come on. Well, I'll try to be the funny person. So I'm adapting, right? I'm trying to adapt and shut the inner critic up so that I can try to feel okay in the room, right?
So real. This is
okay. But meanwhile, it's poking at me, and that, let's say in the moment I'm being the funny person, it's getting more amped. Because I'm trying to I got to feel good. I got to feel settled. I'm feeling all these things, and I got to feel this way.
Yeah.
Well, then you go through that and you leave. And now I'm in the car beating the living snot out of myself.
Spinning, right?
I mean, right. Why did you say that? You're so dumb. They think you're stupid. You look stupid. I mean, beating. I'm waking up in the middle of the night, going over this, you're that. Why can't you get it together? Why can't you this? Why can't you just feel good about yourself? And then the Rolodex comes, because it's like the enemy went, all right, well, I didn't even have to do anything. I don't have to do anything anymore because she's already just gone. Wow. So then it's like, look what you did when you were at this place. Look what you said to that person. They don't like you anymore. Look at this. You're not going to have any of this. You're not going to have any good friends because you don't know how to be comfortable with yourself. Boom, 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 boom. Well, after suffering from that, I still have days. I'm not saying I'm healed in that. And okay, this has been a long road for me. But in trying to look at it, I think there's been many stages for me in confronting this deep-seated lack of love for myself, not only for myself, but in how I gave it out and how I received it. And I'm going to cut down all the years of all the stuff that I've been through. The point that I got to is, okay, going back to where did I first encounter, where did this first kind of manifest for me as a child, And I had to look at, what was it like at home? How was I looked at home? And I have distinct memories Now I know my mom watches, and her and I have honest conversations. So I know anything, her and I can discuss pretty much a lot of things at this point. Between my dad and I, there was a very deep thing that I know that my sister and I, to this day, we talk about. When I walk into a room with my dad in the room, I instantly know how he feels about me. I instantly know if he thinks, I can tell through his eyes if he thinks I look pretty, or better yet, when he doesn't think I do. I know his body language and how he's looking at me.
Yeah.
Still to this day, it's something that I've had to work on and not, I don't want to say not let it affect me, but you and I have worked on a lot of these things together. But it was a very big veil to look at and go, okay, I can attack myself, and sure, there is a ton, let me get a tish. There's a ton of work that I need to look at as far as my own self, my own patterns, what I need to face about myself. But there was a deeper piece of when did this all begin? And how was I first introduced to looking at myself and loving myself? And that was set at home. It was set in how I watched my father interact with my mother and how he treated her and treated us, whether he looked at me or not looked at me. And how that ultimately, that voice, something had to fill in the gap. If I wasn't getting it at home,
that's it. Right.
Something had to fill in the gap, because your brain's going to find a way to process how you see yourself. How you give and receive love will get distorted. If that thing is not set properly, it's going to find a way. And my way ended up being really messed up for a really long time, which then set, and I've talked about this in past things, we can talk about it at other times, but as soon as a boy looked at me, really looked at me, it was like cocaine for me. Just getting attention. And it's painful and it's hard to look at those things of how, your personality, how all these things have been set in motion. Am I going off on a tangent here?
Please keep going. Don't stop. Don't stop.
I don't want to just ramble. But
I don't think you've ever rambled on this podcast.
Well, sometimes I can. But it's hard to look at those things. But we're encouraging you to go to the deeper places of where this was all set, because your brain and your heart's going to find a way to love. And a lot of the times it's not in a healthy way.
Right. Right. It's going to look for it. Like a compromise, like a distorted.
It's a counterfeit. You're going to have a counterfeit that takes over.
Yeah, the counterfeit, right. And then in my journey, I looked in the neglect, in the absence of that affirming voice and experience of what unconditional love looks like. It's like, I'll be loved and accepted if I get all the rules right. And I present a religious life of results and how I speak and all that. It's the same root source, where it traveled for you, where it traveled for me. It's anti-love. It's anti-grace and goodness of God. So then when we try to think about God delighting in us, it's like, it's a foreign concept.
When someone says it, you're like, yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I can do that. It's like, no. When you really dig in there with somebody about how they receive God's love, it's like...
Yeah, and it's like, let's not even talk about love. Do you even think God likes you?
Oh, dude, right there.
That's...
Yeah. Right.
So that, if like, for example, I got many in our tribe that are obsessive compulsive. You have a very intense inner critic. It's not maybe you do.
Oh, when we get it.
No, you do. You do. So let me help you and just go, you do. I find that even people dodge that term perfectionism.
I did. Remember for years how I used to fight you about it? You would say it to me, and I'm like, first of all, I had really, really bad OCD growing up around water. Like, I had to do like rituals with water and washing my feet. It was a whole thing. Anyways, we can save that for another time. But you would say to me about the perfectionism, and I viewed it as being perfect. And because I don't see myself as perfect,
or a high achiever,
you're
like, I'm not really a high achiever. So,
and I was already like putting myself behind the 8 ball because, like, as the firstborns typically manifest being a high achiever and being all these, and I never did. Right? That was not me. Like, not at all. So I already would like dismiss myself. Like, there's no way. I'm not a perfect. Remember how bad I would fight you on it?
Yeah. And then I think where it started to land, and it's land for others, is when I use the language of just right. I need it just right. I need to feel just right. I need to make sure this is just right. I need to have this scenario. I thought about my thoughts just right. I actually think, while I don't think everyone's clinically obsessive compulsive, I do think culturally we are obsessive compulsive, and it is fueled out of the inner critic, fueled out of our broken upbringing, fueled out of our not being equipped in what love means. Because basically obsessive compulsive is, there's a disturbance of something, right? A thought, something, I think I did something wrong, whatever. We spin about it and it's magnified. And I got to solve this, which leads to very compulsive behavior. I got to do something to fix it and solve it. And we end up in these constant loops. What are we not doing in the midst of that? Not experiencing love. We're experiencing false sense of love. I fix this, then I'll be okay.
Right.
And it's very tricky when you then insert Christianity on top of that. And the gospel was not meant to be laid on that foundation.
Right.
It was meant to be laid on the foundation of the absolute love of God for us. And we're laying it on this foundation of like, I got to get my life together. I remember people even say this. Yeah, I'll serve God. I'll start coming to church, but I got to get my life together. We're under that conditioning constantly. Let me get this together and then I'll. And nope.
Right. Like that you have to like prepare the altar. You have to have it. And we don't live under that.
Right. That law that will never satisfy. It will never lead towards redemption and it'll never lead towards true transformation. So I was just like in looking at emotions, there's like some, we talk a lot about emotions, and there's like 7 or so main emotions that they talk about in the spectrum. It's just kind of an interesting little read or deep dive if you want to do it. But one of them is disgust. That's an interesting word, right? Disgust. You look at your journey, right? How you eat, your habits, what you're addicted to, stuff you struggle with. There's often a sense of disgust over them, right? In one sense, it can say that emotion can be a motivation of like, change needs to happen, right? Sometimes addicts need a sense of like
hitting the end of
a true disgust. Where I think that it becomes very detrimental is it's not disgust over the habit or the thing or the pattern. It's disgust over ourselves. It's this sense of just, and I think so many relate to this unclean, kind of gross, irritable, heaviness about your inner world of how, and so the only thing most people know how to do is just be busy, right? Just be busy.
That's true.
We feel a little accomplished. We get a little drip of that dopamine. Like, oh, I did something. I think I'm kind of loved today. I feel better. We're just living out of the self-hate, and I had to realize, okay, I'm not disgusted at just what I do. I'm disgusted at me. Yeah. And now I am an enemy to me.
That's a good statement.
And I think that this is a trap. This is a trap. And Christians often say, I'm my own worst enemy. That's not what God says about you.
Right.
Right? So I think that with the inner critic, you have to come to terms with you being aware of it. And it's just going to take what it's going to take for you. For me, it's a mental health breakdown and relationship pattern breakdown that made me go, okay, I need help. I'm a mess. Mm-hmm. And I think for those of you listening and watching, it'll take what it takes for you to go, all right. Because when people go, I don't have that, I don't have that, they're just not ready. They're just not ready when we're defending. And I've had my seasons of defending. And
you have to get to the point where you're tired of letting time, relationship, connection, so many things being stolen from you. That was what it for me.
Yeah. Enjoyment being stolen.
Everything, nothing was fun.
I go back to,
and I was tired of the torment too. Like I was tired of the standing in the shower replay constantly of my whole life. Like I was just like, I'm tired.
That's what I was going to bring up. When you were sharing going into a setting in a room and you're already critiquing yourself and then you're projecting what people might be thinking, you're analyzing. You and I have talked about this, even like things we said afterwards, the spinning and all that is very exhausting. It's like very draining to live in that.
I've told you too, when I don't know if you remember, I actually mentioned it the other day. I had this pattern where I didn't know what to do. Like when you met me, I would sit with a couple versions of the Bible in front of me and I was trying to figure out, because I kept asking God, what's wrong with me?
Right.
I was asking the wrong question, but he still met me in it, and you and I met, and it's been an amazing journey. But I would be so sick of what I was manifesting and hating myself. I would stand in the shower, and when all the stuff was plaguing me, and I would yell out loud, no, stop. Like I was telling something to stop.
Right.
I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to get it to stop.
Yeah, it's my opinion that this self-hate thing is definitely has a demonic presence to it, for sure. I have found at stage, and for some people, this may not land in kind of their faith walking journey, but I've had moments of doing business with this, breaking agreement. And the best way I can explain it is just feeling something leaving my body.
Right.
Like going from a tense irritability to just I was like, wow. I could see a shift and change. So thank you for bringing up this self-hate thing, because that's basically, when we talk about the inner critic, it's the presence of self-hate. And it's not always loud. I talk about this in the book, God Loves Me and I Love Myself. So that's the deeper dive. We encourage you in your journey. Also, the heart healing journey is a great companion for that, because it's going to have some chapters there on how you relate to yourself and allow the love of God to have its work. But it's just that quiet jerk that sits in the room. It doesn't scream all day. It just kind of goes, hey, what about that? What about that? And the moment there's an opportunity for a relationship or love connection, it gives a punch, and then it just goes back like that. That's basically the description of this. I do believe this is enemy territory, but what I don't want to do is, because I know many people in my audience, they believe in the power of deliverance, so they're going to go and they're going to do 100 deliverance prayers and spin around in circles, and the healing of this is not so much trying to get something out,
correct,
as what we start inviting in.
Amen. Say it again.
And it is the love of the Father.
Yep.
This is where 1 John 4:18 is the greatest deliverance scripture in the Bible. Perfect love casts out fear. And what's the fear here? Being uncomfortable with true unconditional love. And because of it, I'm perfectionistic. Because of it, I'm compulsive. Because of it, I analyze myself. Because of it, when I talk to you, I'm not even really thinking about you. I'm not even, because I'm spinning in me, and I'm lost in the subject. And then you add a religious biblical component. Oh, maybe I committed the unpardonable sin, or maybe I did this, or God's mad at me, or he hasn't forgiven me. And we're spinning out, and lost in all these subjects, because the temptation is chase what the inner critic says. Chase what self-hate is saying. The problem is when a hateful presence is in your life, it doesn't stop. So if it goes, fix your shoes, I got to fix my shoes. Fix your hair, fix your hair. It just keeps going.
It's true. You have to break it.
Until, so I actually, when you said the thing about yelling,
no, stop.
you'd be in the bathroom yelling that or something like that,
out
right?
Loud, actually. Yeah.
You shared that with me, and it was helpful for me because it helped me like draw the line in the sand. Enough, right? But the next level, I'm loved.
Right. Well, I'll give another good example.
And I'm loved right where I'm at.
Exactly. So I've told people, I think I shared this story. I'm doing the dishes and I can get very spun out and I'm catching myself now, but I'll do the dishes and my brain starts going, right? A lot of moms probably, your brain starts going, you're thinking. Well, my OCD will kick in and I'll start like getting crazy about the water spots in the sink and making everything perfect and getting everything cleaned up perfect and da-da-da-da. And meanwhile, you guys are watching a movie together and you're like, come join us. And I'm like, no, I got to get all this done first so I can feel at peace. Now, yes, there's a part of me as a mom and doing things that I need to get done, but I take it too far. Okay. So the audience listening, no, you got to do the dishes. Yeah. No, I take it too far. So, right. Or you guys are playing a game.
Right.
And I got to get all this stuff done. And when my OCD starts to ramp up, like this is going to make me find peace, I have had to go, no, stop what you're doing. Go engage love and relationship. Go engage relationship. Be present in relationship. So it's going with what you're saying.
Very, very good. I find from a very practical standpoint.
Those are practical things that,
It's I notice it rising up. In my life, I like to do like little wood projects or building things or working on little projects around the house or in the yard or whatever. And I'll be like in the midst of the projects and I'm all like irritated.
Right.
I'm just irritated and I'm just like, what am I angry at? Because I'm looking at doing it and I got to do it just right. And then there's pressure. And now I'm not enjoying this.
Right.
And the whole point of me doing this is it helps, I do so much emotional, mental health work. It's a change of a different part of my brain and my heart.
Right.
It's healthy for me. It keeps like, and here I am like getting all knotted up. And it's like, I have to take a step back and go, all right, I'm taking myself too seriously. I enjoy this. God, I invite you to be a part of this with me. That'd be an enjoyment with you. But really, Mark, chill out.
Right.
Chill out. So it's not so much about like fighting and arguing with like what.
Sorry, I just had to check something.
No, it's all right. It's not so much like fighting and arguing back. I'm not going to hate myself. It's more like, and listen to my voice. Listen to how I'm saying this. It's like entering a more gentle, compassionate inner dialogue. I'm all right. It's okay. I see that thought. It's hate. It's creating a war within me to be at war with myself. And if I'm lost in that war, I can't love my neighbor as myself. I'm lost in that. And I'm in a turmoil. I can't love.
Right. And you and I can't be connected the way we need to, or the kid, like it affects. I think that's the thing that we're imploring to people is sit back, take a look around you. Like, how is this affecting your relationships? Not only, obviously, I think if you're tuning into us, you're self-aware enough to know, okay, it's affecting my, right?
Right.
The deeper parts of how it's affecting everyone around you. Are you really able to connect to your spouse and sit with your kids and not feel like, okay, hurry up. I got stuff to do. I got to go. I got stuff to, how is it really affecting all that stuff around you?
I really appreciate your sharing today.
Oh,
I mean, I do all the time. I appreciate you sitting with me, but for some reason, I feel like today was very meaningful to talk through this. So thank you. Because I know it's like, these are vulnerable areas and we're putting, content out there for others and it's vulnerable and it's not,
and it shows
it's not
we're
easy.
Still working on it.
It's not easy.
I'm not perfect in it and I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I look forward to doing some more on this because we're just going to keep navigating. So I think that as a takeaway, it's like, where do you see it? Where do you find, because the inner critic usually has like specific subjects, right? Where does it hit you? Is it your walk with God? Is it how much you read the Bible? Your sin issues, how you parent, how you do your job, how you look, what you look like, what does that mirror in your relationship with mom and dad? Where it's their voice, just staying with you. 2, where is that revealing the absence of a father and mother love and nurture? Because God is a father and we're learning how to relate to him as a father. And that's, I think the awareness is important. Don't rush to like, I got to fix it. How do I fix it? How do I fix it? Let's not jumping. Love is not about just like jumping to fix. Love is about learning to be settled in what love brings. I'm connected to you, God, and I want to be more connected to who you made me to be, to see it the way you see it. So I think if you want to take a next step, the recommendation, it's been a very, very helpful one for so many, is I want to take this relationship you have with yourself and I want to highlight it. And I've called the book God Loves Me and Love Myself. It's been a great help for people in their journey. And as well, another recommendation is the heart healing journey, to be an encouragement for you to be able to look at the areas of your life and allow God to shift how you see them. So we pray this has been a blessing to your life and your journey. If it has, go to markdejesus.com. This is the home website of where all our materials are and resources and so forth, whether it's my solo videos and resources or it's Melissa and I talking together and sharing. We have topics page, course page, books, all that. But you can also donate one-time donation or become a regular supporter. But we pray this has been a blessing to your life and your journey. We look forward to seeing y'all next time, Lord willing.
And the creek don't rise.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.